Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary, and co-host, Alec Krauthamel. Big news dropped today. Two transfers from the Rutgers program have been announced in Jordan Derkack and Lathan Sommerville. We'll get into what led them to make those decisions and how this affects Rutgers moving forward. But first, this podcast is presented to you once again by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting for March Madness. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest odds on everything from college basketball to a $200,000 bracket contest, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. So let's go in a chronological order. The Jordan Derkack news came out slightly before the Lathan Sommerville news. So let's talk that first. Jordan Derkack was a guy who started his career out at Merrimack, played 2 years there, won NEC Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, transferred to Rutgers, and kind of his minutes were jerked around all year. He had some really rough minutes at times. The MSG game is obviously the highlight of his Rutgers career. But this one kind of felt like the writing was on the wall with how his minutes were diminished as the season went on, in Big Ten play especially. Rich, I'll let you take this one first. What's your kind of gut reaction to Jordan Derkack leaving the program?
Yeah, I mean, I would have kept him if the price was right. But if the price isn't right and you think you can make money elsewhere, I'm not mad either. I think you could find a very serviceable player with his numbers somewhere in the portal very easily for probably cheaper than what he was asking for. So I get it. You can kind of parlay that NEC Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, maybe to a mid-major and get a couple bucks, maybe even six figures now, because who knows how this market is. It's inflated now. Or it's projected to be inflated, I should say, with the upcoming rev sharing deal expected to be passed on April 7th, I think it is, or something like that. So as soon as that gets passed, everyone in the world is going to have money. And like I was reading today, like A10, like had ADs, like VCU came out and said we're going to have $4 to $5 million for men's basketball. An anonymous guy who represents multiple mid-major coaches has said this is game-changing for us. So this amount of money that's going to be flowing through the college basketball world is going to be insane, and everyone's going to have it. It's not just the 65 Power 4 schools. We're looking at like 100-plus schools are going to have significant money. So if you're a guy like Jordan Derkack who's produced at the college level, not the greatest in NEC, and you can kind of parlay that along with, hey, look what I did at Michigan State. When I get minutes, I can play. I can ball out like the rest of them. So, end of the day, if I'm Rutgers, I don't see many people on this roster worth keeping. And no offense to him, but if you want money and you want playing time, you're probably not going to get it here. So, I would have loved him as like a seven. I shouldn't even seven, like an eighth man. I think he'd be great in that role. Anything else? I don't really need you. I'm sorry. The only the negative is that you probably aren't going to get his brother, but I don't think they were going to get his brother anyway.
Yeah, Alec, before I get your take on this, I think there is one distinction we need to bring up in terms of the rev share stuff. I think basketball is just this very unique sport in the sense that there's really two main factions. There's the Power 4 football schools who have to who have a ton of money, but the majority of their rev sharing is going to go to football. And then you have these high major basketball only schools who, while they're not making as much in TV revenue, they basically are giving what would equate to our football percentage share to their basketball team. Yeah. So let's talk about a school like VCU. They don't have a football team. They're in the A10. Not a great TV contract, but you combine that with their good NIL. That's how you see these kind of high majors with $4 or $5, maybe even $6 million NIL budgets. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, there's going to be a lot of competition for basically anybody. Inflation is going to be through the roof with what guys are getting paid. So while Rutgers is in a better position than they were last offseason, I still think the prices we're going to hear guys getting is going to be insane.
So real quick. Sorry, Alec, to cut you off again. But it's like a salary cap, $20.5 million per school. Now, are these schools going to use $20.5 million? No, like the Big East schools aren't. But I'm told like Seton Hall came out the other day and said they're going to use a large chunk of that money. Now, it's not just revenue sharing from the TV deal. It makes it easy for Big Ten schools and SEC schools to be like, oh, here's my 20.5 right here. I'm done. I don't have to take it out of my ticket sales, out of my jersey sales, out of this and that. It's any type of revenue they raise throughout the year that they can throw into this fund towards a 20.5 salary cap. Now, Big East schools are probably going to average around like 4 or 5. I think a UConn might average a little more. I was told, at least, for uniquely qualified. There we go. That's the wording. To talk
Did
about
you notice
that
that? I don't know if Greg Schiano is a listener, but he used that phrase yesterday in his presser.
I didn't even notice it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm the same guy that didn't notice he talked about Vic Hall and asked about Vic Hall too. So, mind you, I space out and I'm focused on my question. But besides the point, all these high majors are going to have significant money. All these mid majors, there's a lot of them that are going to have solid chunks of money. Like Davidson with Steph Curry backing is probably going to have a solid amount of money. Like it's going to be interesting to see how I'm trying to think of a weird school. Like, is Drake going to have money? They're going to have something.
Oh yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how much money is just flowing through. So a guy like Jordan Derkack is probably going to get a bag somewhere. So, the floor is yours, Alec.
Yeah, it seemed like a solid addition at the time as like a connector piece between, with playing experience, obviously a solid playing experience at the NEC level, but it just didn't end up formulating that way. I mean, he was one of the guys who was kind of like, his minutes were pulled around all over the place. Like, he drops 28 points at Madison Square Garden and then he plays like 3 minutes the next game or whatever. It was a mixed bag when he was on the floor. I don't think this is like the worst addition or the worst loss in the world, because his minutes really fluctuated and he never really broke through as that consistent third option on the floor. But at the same time, I mean, if you're going to be starting over completely, I mean, at the very least, you want someone who has experience in college basketball and it's at least a year of experience playing in the system as well. So we'll see. I mean, it depends on how Rutgers replaces these guys that end up leaving. Are they going to bring in someone that has a similar role where, he has experience, playing a primary option role elsewhere and then coming in to kind of be a third option or something like that? Or, are they going to target a defensive stopper to take his role or something like that? It's tough to say. If I had to guess, Derkack probably goes to like an A10 level like we saw with Derek Simpson last year. I wouldn't be surprised if that's where he lands somewhere in there. Maybe like I don't know. I mean, St. Joe's comes to mind when we talk Derek Simpson, something like that, somewhere at the A10 level where it's like a solid mid-major conference, because I do think the flashes are there. And like I said, I mean, we saw him score 28 points against a team that's still playing right now in the Sweet 16 at Madison Square Garden. So the flashes are there. It's just, putting it all together and consistently doing so.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate because I think he was a guy that I thought would be an impact guy. I think in reality, I don't think he had a great feel for playing at this level. I think he was able to get away with a lot of things in the NEC, just kind of being bigger and stronger than a lot of guys. And when you are basically you have the same level of strength as most guys in the Big Ten, those moves don't really work anymore. You saw that with like the booty ball back down stuff didn't really work. His handle wasn't as tight as you'd like to see. Lost a lot of balls in the paint. And additionally, I don't think he had the foot speed to cover a lot of the quicker guards and wings in the conference, because I thought he'd be a defensive stopper. But I think when you're taking a guy who plays in a very niche defensive system, like Merrimack only runs zone. So it's kind of the same for like taking a zone corner and trying to play him in man in the NFL. Like, sure, it could work, but you don't really know until you get him out playing those kind of systems. So I don't feel like he picked up Pikel's defensive schemes very well, and I think you saw a lot of guys sit because they weren't cutting it on defense, and he was one of them. So while it's unfortunate, and I know his brother is a very high level player in Aiden Derkack, who Alec, you've seen play multiple times, this probably takes Rutgers off the table there, but I think there needs to be an overall talent boost across the court next year, and Ace and Dylan aren't going to be back. And unfortunately, this is today's day and age in college basketball. If you're not cutting it, you're probably not going to be on the team next year. But so that's what we got on Jordan. The second player to enter the portal today is probably one of the guys that the staff ideally would have liked to keep in Lathan Sommerville, who certainly was far more advanced than any big that Rutgers has had offensively ever in the Steve Pikiell era, even as a true freshman. I mean, a good proxy that a lot of NBA teams like to use in terms of somebody's scoring potential and shooting potential is free throw percentage. He was the best free throw shooter on the team. So I do think there is an upside to unlock here in terms of his deep range and his shooting. But we never really unlocked it this year. Alec, what's your take on Lathan Sommerville leaving the program?
It's like you said, Mike. It's not an ideal one to lose because only a freshman having 3 years of eligibility is very big. B, like you mentioned, the offensive skill set that he showed. He had probably the best touch in the paint aside from Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey on the team and out of any Rutgers center that we've seen in a long time. While he kind of backed himself into a corner at times on offense, he would also bail himself out because he has such a great touch around the rim and great post moves and a post game in general. He's a great free throw shooter. I mean, the best free throw shooter on the team. You don't see that too often as a center. So when he would go up at the rim, he would draw a lot of fouls and he would hit his free throws. And it also helped Steve Pikiell trust him late in games that he would hit free throws, which he hit a lot of big free throws late in games as well. So offensively, there was definitely a lot to like, especially, as someone who would potentially develop. Obviously, that's not going to happen at Rutgers in the future. The main problem was his defense. You just kind of never figured it out on that end, whether it was, going up against a bigger center or something like that, or, working in like the pick and roll game where he kind of struggled with like where to be in the defensive positioning, which is, a thing that takes a while to learn under Steve Pikiell's system. I forget who said it. I think it might have been Miles Johnson when he came back for the UCLA game. He said, defending screens as a big is one of the hardest things of Steve Pikiell's defense to learn. So he kind of never really got it all together there. I know Richie said this a lot too. It seemed like he didn't exactly fit as a Steve Pikiell big man for those reasons. Not being a great rim protector, not really being a great defensive piece and an anchor that, the defensive system relies on. So, I mean, his offensive ceiling was probably the best, like you said, Mike, of any Rutgers center that we've seen under Steve Pikiell, maybe even before that as well. But it just felt like an odd fit. I don't know how he would have worked, especially considering if they're planning on bringing in a rim protecting center, there probably would have been some kind of logjam there as well. So it's definitely a really tough loss on the offensive end and just a development end too, because this is a guy that you wanted to develop over time. We knew he was going to be not like a complete project. Like there was things there, like obviously the offensive floor, but this was a guy that could have turned into a really good college basketball player by 2027 or something like that with the right development. And now that's going to happen elsewhere, not at Rutgers. And I did find it interesting. He went into the portal with a do not contact tag. That doesn't always mean that he knows exactly where he's going. But it could mean that he's just very picky on where he's going. I don't know what that means for his future or where he's headed. But it's a very tough loss.
You were muted, but I am assuming you say, Richie, what's your take?
Yeah. Let's hear what your take is on this, Rich.
Bye. Adios. I don't need the drama. Like, it's just not a good culture fit. It's a kid that's been leaving, had his eye 1 foot out the door halfway through the season. Before the season even started, he was he played a role in why they probably didn't get a big man. He basically said he wanted starter minutes, and I get it, like everyone does. And you're part of this fabulous Fab 5 level class, you want to call it. And he basically went into Pikiell's office apparently after the season, said, I want X amount. X amount was in the 7-figure range, supposedly. I'm not paying 7 figures for Lathan Sommerville when you can't defend shit. So in the nicest way possible, I'm sorry, but like, adios. Like I don't need you. Now the do not contact thing, like Alex said, is pretty interesting. He did spend time in Georgia. So this is pure conspiracy theory to me. Carl Hobbs, I'd watch out for down there. Georgia Tech has money. He spent time in Georgia at the Skill Factory in high school before transferring back up to, I think it was Richwoods High School. He's from Peoria, Illinois. So I don't think Illinois would go after him. I think maybe if you're McCollum maybe, but he doesn't. He plays kind of an interesting style too. That I don't know if Lathan would fit too well, but who knows? I don't think he really has his thing in mind. I think it's more of like, hey, just handle it through my agent type thing. I don't give a shit. Like, he's going to handle this for me. He knows what I want, preference wise, money wise. I don't even know if there's even a location preference for Lathan, to be honest with you, because he's been about money for God knows how long. So we said it when he was recruited. We said it when he committed. We said it when he signed. We said it when he was on, well, not even on campus signed. We said it when he was playing. Like, he was gone from the get go. Like, it didn't really matter what you did. I think you could even probably have given him the mill, and he probably still would have said, yeah, I still want to shop my options and see what's going on. And rightfully so, I guess. He's a pretty good offensive player. He's got a nice skill set on the offensive end, and it's nice because he has that dribbling ability that you don't really have with a big man. And he can, he can take guys one-on-one. Should he be doing it at the top of the key? Absolutely fucking not. Did he do that? Yeah. It was Lathan time. The blinders came on.
He was a black hole when he got the ball. Like, if he got the ball anywhere within 18 feet of the hoop, he was going to try and back his guy down. He had, like, one of the most awkward Euro steps I've ever seen for a big, because he would just, like, how many travels or charges did he get called for? Because he would just, like, his elbows were high. He was just, like, blowing through dudes. Occasionally he drew contact, and he was obviously a great free throw shooter. But, yeah, no, he needs some refinement. There's a lot of, like, awesome raw materials there. I don't want to, like, just say that this is like, good riddance.
He's got a ton of talent.
I really liked him as a player, but his defense, he was just a total liability on defense. And we had too many absolute turnstiles and parking cones out there on defense. And the few guys that really stood out defensively, I think Peichel's going to fight to keep. A guy like Dylan Grant. Dylan Grant has to be priority number one for this staff to hold on to. But even a guy like Bryce Dortch, like, I feel like he made a lot of progress this year. Like, he wasn't by any means like an offensive superstar by the end of the season, but he went from like a totally broken offensive game to, like, he could reliably put the ball back when he would get an offensive rebound, or, he was, a surprising, like, kind of high flyer on a few putback dunks. And defensively, he really kind of shined at points. He was playing small ball 5 when we really needed him. But I think the common theme with guys that Peichel's probably going to target in the portal is, can you play defense, and have you shown that on tape in college? Because I think he's done relying on freshmen moving forward.
One thing on Lathan I thought was interesting. I mean, when we were when he was signed and all that, and he was about to down the stretch of last season, and once we were in the off season and started talking about him, we heard a lot about how he's like a really good passer for a big man, and all the offensive skills that he possesses. And we really didn't see that after the first game when he had that really impressive behind the shoulder pass to Jordan Derkack against Wagner. We really didn't see much of that after that. So I am very curious if that pops up in his development elsewhere, where he becomes like a really strong passer, because like Mike said, at a lot of times it seemed like the defense was collapsing on him as he's backing his guy down, and there would be open guys around him, but he just didn't see him and went up with it. So, yeah, interesting one.
Well, I feel like that's also lack of movement on offense, which we didn't really see any backdoor cuts, which was kind of crazy. His passing ability is there. His offensive ability is there. Do I think he made stupid shot selections? I think his shot selection was probably just as bad as Ace's at times, if not the whole season. But he has the skill set offensively that you want in a big man, and someone that I really think in like a Big East program, I think he'd fit really well. Now, to be determined where he ends up, so who knows. But I do think like a school like Xavier was on his list towards the end, so I don't think that'd be a bad fit. They have money, Big East. I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but this also forces Peichel's hand. You need a big man in the portal now.
A school like Illinois, like they turned they turned Coleman Hawkins into. I mean, they body wise they're not exactly a 1-to-1 match, but offensively I think they have a similar skill set.
I just don't know if they'll go after it because they have money. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, they've got money. I mean, it's obviously from the state of Illinois. Won in the Gatorade Player of the Year in that state.
Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
But forces his hand to get a big man now. So
it does. Speaking of forcing his hand to get certain players, a lot of players have entered the portal. obviously, given that we've been open for over 24 hours now. Is there anybody, Rich, that you would keep an eye on of guys who have entered the portal in the first day and a half?
Out of the 700 plus names, I think I could think of one. The kid, Brandon Knight's nephew, and
Tariq Francis.
Tariq
Francis. Yeah.
I
would keep an eye on him yesterday?
Yeah, I think
we did
for
talk
a
about him
minute.
yesterday.
Yeah, he's probably the one to keep an eye on for the sole fact that obvious connection there. Do I think he's good? No, sorry. Like 19 points per game, awesome. 18 shots per game, not awesome. 36% from the field, not awesome. So he fits the shitty offense they have. But no, I would look more towards like lengthier wing types. I don't even know where they look because I don't really know how much they're going to have to compete with, like money-wise. Like they're going to look at like a Joel Bethea. Do I think they land a Joel Bethea? I don't care if he struggled as a 5-star. He was a 5-star for one season. He's still going to get used. He's going to parlay that into another bag somewhere. So I don't know, man. It's I hate to sound sour about this team, but like I just don't see them adding very talented prospects this offseason.
Well, they have been connected to a few guys, if you believe the Twitter reporters. So there's been a few players who have entered the portal who have, spoken to reporters and said that they've heard from Rutgers. One that's really interesting is Cam McDowell, who played at McEachern High School. He's currently at a D2 college. I want to say like Northwestern Oklahoma. But he averaged something. Northwestern Oklahoma State. Yeah, sorry. Put some respect on their name.
Yeah, seriously, yeah.
Scored like over 27 points a game.
Second highest in D2.
Yeah, I think he shot over 40% from three. He had several 40-point games this past season. He started his career, I believe, at Georgia. I know he was at Georgia. I don't remember where he started. I want to say he started at Troy or something like that.
Jacksonville State, I think it was.
Jacksonville State.
It was Georgia first, then Jacksonville State.
Okay, so Georgia, then Jacksonville State, and then D2. But it's obviously the connections there. He's got the size. He's like 6'6", like 210. Really athletic guy. He can shoot. So watch out for that. Once we get some names solidified.
I'm looking at his game log, and the second most recent game against Southeastern Oklahoma, he dropped 44 points in 40 minutes on 14 to 24 shooting, 6 of 11 from 3, 10 of 13 from the free throw line. He scored 40 points, or no, that's minutes. Sorry, he scored a lot of points. That's all he scored. Yeah, he scored 40 plus twice, 30 plus a bunch more times. I mean, yeah, wow.
I'm nervous about that one, to be honest. I know it's a McEachern guy. I know he's got the connection, whatever, to Rock. I guess it's a connection, sort of. But he also didn't do shit at Jacksonville State. He didn't do shit at Georgia. Like, did he dominate D2? Yeah, I could probably put Jordan Derkack in D2, and he's probably going to put up similar numbers. So it's like,
I think
maybe not similar. That's a lot of scoring. I'll give him that. And his numbers are good, but it's also D2, and that's where I'm very concerned.
Yeah, I think when you look at some of the standout mid-major programs this year, they were doing a great job at mining the lower levels. Like you look at UC San Diego, I think their entire team was D2 guys. Like you look at Tobin Anderson, what he did a few years ago, largely taking a D2 or D3 roster and bringing it to the Division I. Obviously, It's not like – what'd you say?
Drake with Ben McCollum. Speaking of which, Bennett Sturts is now in the Big Ten with Iowa with Ben McCollum.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other thing is like the Big Ten got a whole lot better this offseason with some of the coaches they brought in. Ben McCollum's a stud. Medved's a stud. I don't think that's been formally announced with him at Minnesota, but
it has, I think.
It has.
I'm pretty sure.
He's a stud. Northwestern kept Chris Collins. He's obviously a very good coach.
That was a mute, but his presser's starting as we speak.
Okay. Indiana was able to get the guy from West DeVries, who I'm not a huge fan of. I don't think he's like as good as the other two hires, but he's certainly better than what they had.
Yeah.
And DeVries is bringing his son along with him, like who, if you don't know, was the best player on West Virginia, and the other, the previous stop was he at Drake previously, DeVries?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because all three are now former Drake coaches in the Big Ten.
So was Medved.
Yeah, Drake is they're not great at developing football coaches, but basketball coaches they're pretty damn good at.
Wrong sport, damn.
So yeah, we'll have more on names later this week.
I got one for you actually. Just entered the portal out of Pennsauken Township. Daywilk Tavares out of Charleston. Previously was at Delaware State. Pennsauken guy, averaged 13 a game, 13 points per game, 3.6 rebounds, 2.5 assists. Jersey guy, pretty good scoring numbers. I don't know what his shooting splits are, but
What was his name?
Daywilk Tavares.
There it is. Yeah, let's find. Charleston was a very good team this year. They also had their big man also enter the portal. He's also like testing out the NBA draft waters. So yeah, that guy's. I forget his name, but he's really good.
Yeah, here's my problem with this is that he was there last year too. He averaged more points last year actually. He put up better shooting percentage this year, better points per game last year. The problem is last year his head coach was Pat Kelsey. If Pat Kelsey wants him,
he was at Delaware State last year.
Oh, you're right. Never mind.
Yeah, so this year he averaged 13 points a game on 41% shooting from the floor, 41% from three on 159 attempts, and then 68% from the free throw line.
Okay, so maybe they do have a shot at him.
Yeah, he was the 2024 MEAC Rookie of the Year at Delaware State last year.
It's a name.
Yeah, I want to do a pod where we just go over some targets that we've kind of sourced and found connections with a little more in depth. This is like such a crazy 24 hours that like as we're talking, like there's a bunch of guys I've seen go in that could potentially be Rutgers targets, but
maybe not a Rutgers target, but like Donovan Dent just entered the portal from New Mexico. That was a crazy one.
He's gonna get a lot of money.
I would be shocked if I know Richard Pitino has been linked with a lot of jobs this offseason. Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if Dent follows Richard if he ends up leaving. Rutgers or wrestling also had its portal open yesterday. A few Rutgers guys entered the portal. Joe Fangaro, the 149 pounder, Luke Gayer, and Brian Saldano entered the portal. Saldano obviously came in as a very much heralded recruit. His unique, funky wrestling style had pretty high peaks and pretty low lows. Just couldn't really put it all together at Rutgers. Wish him well. The other two guys never really saw the mat. One other Rutgers wrestling note, Dean Peterson. It was a news item that he removed Rutgers from his social media profiles. He has since added Rutgers back to his social media profiles. So maybe we could take a deep breath there. He was one of 3 Rutgers wrestlers who was one match short of All-American status this past weekend.
Watcher of the pod, maybe he saw it and was just like, hey,
yeah, maybe.
Side note, back to Lathan Sommerville real quick. His agent quote tweeted it and said, "Contact me for more info. Thank you." So maybe that's what the do not contact means. It means Lathan ain't handling shit. Like, talk to me.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's what that means for a lot of these kids. You know, maybe it's not that they're being directly tampered with. It's that their agent is handling the recruitment and all that fun stuff. Not exactly Rutgers adjacent, but came out right before we started recording that right down the road on Route 1 in Princeton, letting go of 2 assistant coaches, one of them being Brett McConnell, which is a pretty big note. Considering I believe he graduated from Rutgers. His dad is Kevin McConnell, the chief of staff for Rutgers football. Lawrence Rowley, the other assistant coach that Princeton is letting go of. It's pretty big because I believe McConnell recruited a lot of their roster and was in charge of a lot of the game planning as well. Like that guy, he's been on the radar for a bunch of jobs all over the place, really, whether it's, mid-major jobs or high-major assistant jobs. I know we've kind of talked about him potentially being at Rutgers over the years as Princeton's gotten a lot better. So that's pretty notable one.
Not only that, Mitch Henderson, he was a longtime assistant at Northwestern. He came to Princeton, I believe, in 2011. And Brett McConnell got hired in like 2012 there. So he's been on staff for, 12, 13 years?
Yeah.
They've had a ton of success under Henderson and under McConnell. Obviously, the recruiting wins they've had, the style of offense they play is very innovative. Wouldn't mind if Rutgers found a way to give him a look. We'll see. I know that's been a long time rumor that's never really come to materialize, but who knows? We'll see how things go this offseason.
I think a team like Penn, who's looking for who's in the coaching search would be foolish not to at least take a look at him for the head coaching job. Speaking of Penn's head coaching search, I believe Fran McCaffrey interviewed there yesterday. Someone in the Curry Hicks Stage search season space did yesterday that he interviewed there. I think another name for there is NYU head coach Dave Klasky. I think that would be a good hire too. So,
Dave Klasky's dominating D3 at NYU.
I'll tell his brother you said what's up tonight at my Monroe adult league game. He runs the whole complex, and all you see is Dave Klasky's photo with Coach K like everywhere. Like it's weird. Like you go in the bathroom, it's just on like pinned above the toilet, and I'm like, hey, it's Coach K watching me piss. I'm like I know
he's always watching. Big brother's always watching.
Yeah, it's funny. He's a hell of a coach, though, man.
Yeah, no, it's he's another search season favorite. That's another thing is search season's a great listen if anyone listens on there. I know Alex usually on there. Aaron Brightman usually listens. A bunch of Rutgers people I've noticed in the crowd. He mentioned Rutgers last night. Somebody donated like $69 to him.
And 69 cents.
And 69 cents, sorry.
How come we can't get those donations? What the hell?
Yeah, Richie tweeted it was like a minute and a half audio from the pod, from the space. But if you want to check that out, that's on the Rutgers Rivals Twitter account.
Real quick before we sign off, college basketball crown news finally came out about the NIL prize. Vivid Seats sponsored it. They will be paying the championship team $300K, the runner-up $100K, and every semifinalist gets $50K. I think Rutgers fucked up by not doing it now, a little bit, slightly.
I mean, it's
if they weren't
still
going
a
to
loss.
play, yeah.
I mean, I think you can give the money to your athletes, so that's a way to like.
You guys have this. I'll talk to you.
All right, yeah, I think that's a way to kind of launder the money to the athletes, even though it's going to cost the school more. But whatever, I'm glad that they didn't prolong the season any longer than they needed to. But any final words here, Alec, before we head out?
One thing I forgot to mention yesterday, Rutgers women's basketball won their second round WNIT matchup against Army, 71-60. It was a very interesting game. Rutgers got out to a blazing hot start, then Army came back. They cut it to they led by as much as 18 in the second quarter, and then it got cut to 2 in the fourth quarter, but they held on. They ran away with it at the end. They'll be hosting Charleston, the College of Charleston. Speaking of Charleston, they'll be hosting them on Thursday at 7 p.m. at Jersey Mike's Arena. So postseason action still going, and the gymnastics team made the NCAA tournament as well. So shout out to them as well. First time in I think over a decade. They'll go up against Clemson in the play-in. I'm not as well versed on gymnastics as most sports, so yeah, congrats to them.
Yeah, congrats to them. I think it's the first time they made the NCAAs in quite a while. So and they've been the subject of a very tumultuous offseason and season. So shout out to the gymnastics ladies for their huge accomplishment this season. But that is all we've got for you today. We will have more, obviously, on spring football, which starts this weekend. And we'll also have more regarding transfer portal targets, which we'll have more on later this week. But for me and Richie and Alec, this has been another edition of the Night Report podcast, signing off.